In this video, we are going to continue getting the bits off to get the cylinder head off so we can find out what's making a little tapping noise. Watch on. So, we've kind of seen this before, but we're going to be off with this, out with the plug leads, off with the cam cover. I'm going to have a brief look at something I'll show you that I want to just see if I've left any stones unturned, and then we'll crack on with head off. Okay? And we're going to do it in the car because the whole ethos, the noise, the heater's on. My whole ethos with this really is to see, can you look after these cars yourself? Do you have to pay specialists? Lots of people in the club do little things, but judging by the fact that there's not many projects of these on YouTube, it's not done that often. I know I've got a ramp. It's not that hard to take the gearbox and engine out, but let's just see, how easy is it? Now a big thank you has to go out here to Peter Sleeman, Petrolhead Pete, I think, on Piston Heads, for making a guide on how to do this to start with. Now I followed that nearly all the way, but there's quite a few bits here where the detail I found slightly lacking, so the length of some bolts and the size of some sockets. And whilst that may seem trivial, it makes a huge difference later on into making this a bit easier for yourselves. So maybe read that and watch this together. In that big interlude you saw us remove all the throttle body side in one go. The idea is to keep the exhausts on, drain the coolant, so to remove this line across the front. And I've just succeeded in undoing the crank pulley and remembering something that is going to be trapped on. The socket, that is, un momento. Step one of why this is difficult is the gap between the crank bolt and the chassis. I have a cut down 22mm impact there, so if you leave 10mm in there, that's the depth of the nut. The Wearer ratchets, slightly mangled by a cheetah bar, but they do this. Swivel head ratchet. That swivel head is the difference between making that very, very easy and very, very difficult. Then we take the rest of it off with a spanner, and then we're going to come into the next issue with doing this in the car. So herein lies our issue. Firstly, the bolt, when we undo it, hits the chassis, so we need to sort of tilt the engine a little bit. That's not too much of an issue. Then we have to get the harmonic damper off. But let's take this one step at a time. So, first things first, we need to get up into the little section around the exhaust, so we can drop out the battery from its funny little hiding spot and pull out the loose aluminium flap that is the battery tray. Then we can just sort of peel the sound insulation out of the way, and you've got access to the two M10 bolts that hold on the back of the engine mount. That's going to let us sort of tease the engine over slightly. Now it's time for the catalytic converter clamps that we only just installed. Just a very long 10mm gets you onto those, and then give them a whack and they sort of come out. The exhaust will then drop down until it sits on the sort of mid plate, the stainless steel plate just underneath the gearbox. Right, now we're really cooking with gas. So support the engine. If you're doing this on your driveway or in a garage but on the floor, just a trolley jack will do fine. Just take the weight, and then we're going to undo the engine side of this side engine mount, so the actual engine can drop down and move over slightly. Finally! I told you this is easy, right? We can get the damper pulley bolt out. And here we go. Basically, we're trying to get the bolt to miss that stupid crossbar just there. And victory! Look at that happy little chappy there. Easy as that. Now I apologise for the lighting, but one thing to remember before we start trying to pull this thing off is these 3 threaded holes in here, which probably haven't been used on your car before. Just tap them out before you try and put a bolt in them. I don't have a tap, so I've cut a bolt down the middle to make one, like that. And then we're going to get on to try and pulling this bugger off. So I apologise for how hard this is to film. So here we've got our crankshaft damper pulley remover thing, and this one from Amazon is absolutely perfect. No modification at all. So let's see if Mr. Smug can actually get this to work. So basically it's bolted on their 5/8 bolts, of course they are, here we are, to bolt it onto the damper, and then we slot that through there. It's a 22mm front piece, and then a 3/8 on the end of it. Make sure it's all oiled. I am trying not to hit you as I do this, and it's coming off no problem. And as we're doing this, we're not making it any longer, because all we're doing is actually moving this little bolted section up the threaded rod. Just make sure you've got everything oiled up. The only thing we are going to start to get an issue with, I think, is the gap for the spanner. So fingers crossed. That is exactly as far as you can get it off with that puller. So let's see if the last bit's even possible. Easy as that. Oh, and the woodruff key. Nope. There we go. And no damage to anything. Yes, you can remove it in the car, actually quite easily. And I'll show you the tool exactly now. Okay, so I'll put a link on eBay to this, but this is just a little DP Tools Amazon thing, really. And it was perfect. Now, you're going to want to shorten the bolt. It works perfectly to remove it, but you can't get it out again very easily. 125mm, so shorten the main shaft to 125mm, and then you can do that and leave the oil tank in and leave all those lines attached. But it's very clever, it's very thin, so you can see why this works. Goes on like so, and then as you back that nut out, as you saw, it pulls it off. And that stud pattern works perfectly on the Speed 6. I got some slightly longer bolts to go into the front of the harmonic damper. They're 5/16, and these are 40mm thread. And that gives you a good engagement and makes them short enough to get out still. So I wouldn't go any different with those. Now the kit does come with a load of thread adapters, which basically you put into there, and that would thread into the crank. I didn't use those. What I did instead was use a big thick washer over the face, over the snout of the crank, and that allowed us to move this up and down, and again that made the difference. But do that and it's actually quite easy. The only thing we will do, and I've ordered the right things for the mill, is I'm just going to cut a head back on that with a Stephenson's collet, so it comes back looking like that again, because you can get a socket on the end of it and use that to wind it out as well. Another reason for not using the thread adapters, just having that sitting on a big washer on the face of the crank. But there you go, cracking tool. Now of course I have had that off before, still need a lot of force, so the taper fit itself requires a bit of welly. But if it was rusted on, would it be harder? Yes. I'm not going to lie, of course it would. So there we go, that is a big thing out of the way. If you do have this out of your car, by the way, make sure you re-tap those holes. Say I did it and they came out fine. But you think they take a lot of weather, don't they? So we can now get the timing cover off, and then it's pulleys off and head off. Okay, so that's all off. Now the next step is timing cover. So all the little Allen head bolts around the sides, and then you've got 2 bolts on the chain tensioners. The lower one, take the little M6, take the little Allen head locking bolt off first, then ping off the larger nut, and you should be fine on doing that unless some idiot's done it up very tight. Then top one is just like a cane, it's a cane nut I think it's called, it's like an oval nut. So undo those, take all those off, and then it's just getting the timing cover off, which will be interesting because it's glued on. Quick word of warning, when the chap on piston head says there's not much oil in the timing case, it's well drained, well either I've done something wrong or it's a lie. I think we'll let that drain for a minute. And I did actually remember to empty the dry sump tank as well, so don't kill me there. Would you reckon I can do this without getting it on my hair? For actually getting it off, don't pry anywhere. There's quite a few places where the casing overhangs the engine block, and just tap on that with a big copper drift, just really lightly, all the way around, and eventually it'll just pop off. No problem. Of course, it could just be that mine's made worse than something, so maybe the rest is too small. I don't know, just don't pry anything, you'll break it. Remember, we can actually bend the front of that by pushing on it. What a mess. Ah! I might filter this oil and run it again, because it's not really done much, is it? So I'm just trying to catch as much as I can, and I don't want to ruin the floor any more than it already is. But now the river hasn't come in here for a while, I might go for the nice floor mats. Right, cup of tea. There we are. Timing cover off with the engine in the car. Nice and easy. So I've got to stop here because annoyingly we've got a problem with the bolt. So, I've been impaled on a Triumph. This is the monster bolt that goes through, which is a right pain to get in and out. And we need to put it back in so I can turn the engine over. We also need to attach a timing disc, which is fine, but I want the centre bore of that to go over the crankshaft snout where the harmonic balancer goes, so this stays in one position, because if I squash it with a bolt there's a chance it can move as I turn the engine over. I also could do with a smaller bolt. So the problem with using another M14 by 1.5 is that the threads start really far down the crankshaft snout, which is why the bolt's so long, which is why you can't get in and out very easy. There is a larger, more coarse thread in the front of the crank, which I think is M16 by 2. So I'm going to try and get one of those whilst I try and do the timing. So that's the next bit. Next bit is finding top dead centre, mounting that, and then we can pull it all apart and then get the head off to da-da-da-da-da. But That'll be a little while now, maybe a week or so, so I will stop the video here. Thank you very much for watching. I know it's another short one, but let's try and keep all the momentum going, and we'll see if you enjoy the short videos as well. So thanks very much for watching. Do subscribe, like, all that stuff. Thank you very much.